Hi, I'm here once again, Upashna, back to you for a better understanding of the Tempest. Okay, so as you know that I'm your guide for a better understanding of the Tempest, and in today's session I will be doing Act 1, Scene 2 of the Tempest. Okay, Act 1, Scene 2 is basically pretty lengthy. Alright, so to do it in one sitting won't be possible. So I have bifurcated it and I have divided it into 4 episodes. So today I will be doing just for the first episode of Act 1, Scene 2. So basically there are 4 important episodes in Act 1, Scene 2. It is not mentioned in the book, but I have bifurcated it. Alright, so the first episode is where Prospero narrates the story of his past to his daughter Miranda. The second episode is where we meet Ariel and we come to know that the Tempest was actually executed by Ariel. In the third episode we meet Caliban, and in the fourth we have the first encounter between Ferdinand and Miranda. Okay, so today we will do Act 1, Scene 2. Okay, the first episode of Act 1, Scene 2. So there it goes. So first of all, let's see the setting. The setting is now on the island, on the enchanted island. Okay, in Act 1, Scene 1, the setting was on board, on the king's ship. Okay, here the scene shifts. So now we are taken to the island. Okay, so the setting is on the island. Act 1, Scene 2. Enter Prospero and Miranda. So Miranda says, "If by your art, my dearest father, you have put the wild waters in this roar, allay them. The sky, it seems, would pour down stinking pitch, but that the sea, mountain to the Vulcan's cheek, dashes the fire out. Oh, I have suffered with those that I saw suffer. A brave vessel, who had no doubt some noble creature in her dashed to pieces. Oh, the cry did knock against my very heart. Poor souls, they perished. Had I been any god, I would have sunk the earth, the sea within the earth, or it should the good ships who have swallowed and the frotting souls within her." Okay, so the first character we are introduced to here is Miranda, the daughter of the protagonist Prospero. So she has seen the Tempest. She was on the island and she has seen from a far distance, she had seen the Tempest, the direful spectacle where the ship was tempest tossed and finally wrecked. She has seen that, and that has knocked her very hard. She is in a state of anxiety. She is panicking. She goes to her father and begs him to control the Tempest. She goes to her father and says, "Oh father, if it is by your art that you have put the wild waters to this roar, then allay them." Saying, if father, if it is you, if it is your art, if it is your magic, if it is by your powers that you have created the Tempest, then please I beg you to stop this. Oh, look at the sky. It looks pitch black. It looks like as if it's going to rain tar. And the sea waves, they are rising so high, it looks like it's going to touch the sky and dim the light of the sun. Okay, and then she explains, she tells us what she has seen. She says, "Oh father, I have suffered with them. I just saw with my own eyes how a brave vessel here means the king's ship, I saw it dash into pieces. And the people, the frotting souls, and the people were crying and screaming in pain and agony. Their screams knocked my very heart. It touched my heart with pity." So here we see how Miranda is able to empathize with them. Okay, it is not just sympathy. So you have to know there is a difference between sympathy and empathy. Sympathy is when you feel for the person, and empathy is when you feel with the person. And here Miranda is feeling with them. She says it knocks her very heart. And then she says, poor souls, I think they are perished." And she says, "I think, father, they all must have been good people, noble people." And then she says, "Had I been any god of power, I would have made the seabed suck in the entire water before it would have swallowed the ship and the innocent people." She is moved to pity. So the very first instance when we meet her, her very words reveal to us her nature. She is a very innocent girl. Okay? She is not aware of the ways of the world. She has not stepped foot outside the island. She has not seen anybody else outside the island. She has not seen these people. She doesn't know who these people are. She has just seen the tempest from a distance, and she has heard them cry and scream. And yet she thinks that those are all innocent, noble people. Okay? And now we meet Prospero. Be collected, no more amazement. Tell your piteous heart, there's no harm done. So now we are introduced to Prospero for the first time. And he says, he's been listening to his daughter, and then he says, be collected. Calm down, my dear daughter. Tell your piteous heart, there's no harm done. So be collected. It's now over. The tempest is now over. And let me tell you, calm down. Let me tell you that there's no harm done to the people or the passengers on board. Okay? And Miranda says, oh, the day. Oh, such a sad day. I had to see all this. And then Prospero says, no harm. I have done nothing but in care of thee, my dear one, thee, my daughter, who art ignorant of what thou art, not knowing of whence I am, nor that I am more better than Prospero, master of a full poor cell, and thy no greater father. So Prospero says, first of all, he consoles his daughter by saying, be collected, calm down. Let me tell you that they are all safe. There's no harm done to them. And let me tell you, my daughter, I have done this. I have created this tempest. I have put the wild waters to roar. Just for your sake, I have done this all for you, my dear daughter. Because you are still ignorant of who you really are. You are unaware. You're ignorant of what thou art, meaning you are unaware of who you really are. You are unaware of the fact that your father, Prospero, is not just a master of this small cell on this island. He is much greater than that. But you are unaware of that. So I have done this just for you, my dear daughter. And then Miranda says, more to know did never meddle with my thoughts. So Miranda says, oh father, to know about the past or to know more, it never occurred to my mind. And then Prospero says, 'tis time. I should inform thee further. Lend thy hand and pluck my magic garment from me. So lie there, my art. Okay, so Prospero says, it's time now. Now you have to know more. You have to know about our past now. But before that, just help me remove my cloak. Lend me thy hand, meaning just help me, my daughter, to remove my cloak. So he has been wearing a cloak. A cloak is something like an outer, okay, that usually magicians or wizards wear, are shown wearing. So he has been wearing that. So he asks his daughter to help him remove the cloak. So Miranda helps him remove the cloak. Gently he takes it off and very gently keeps it aside and says, lie there, my art. So you can see how connected he is to his art. Okay, so he keeps it aside and says, lie there, my art. And now he looks to his daughter and says, wipe thou thine eyes, have comfort. The direful spectacle of the wreck, which touched the very virtue of compassion in thee, I have, with such provision in my art, so safely ordered that there is no soul, no, not so much as an hair betit to any creature in the vessel, which thou heardest cry, which thou sawest sink. Sit down, for thou must now know further. So first he removes his cloak with the help of his daughter, keeps it aside and says, lie there, my art, for a while. And then he looks to his daughter and says, wipe your tears, my daughter, wipe your tears now. Let me assure you that there's no harm done to the people. Okay, they are all safe. And this direful spectacle which you just saw, that frightening scenario of the tempest which you just saw, which knocked your heart. Let me tell you that I have created it in such a manner, with such provision. I have created the tempest in such a manner that nobody is harmed. The passengers have not even lost a single strand of hair. Forget about being injured. So I have done it all safely, let me assure you. So you don't worry. So now sit here, my daughter, and listen to me carefully, because now it is time for you to learn more. Now it is time for you to know about our past. And then Miranda says, you have often begun to tell me what I am, but stopped and left me to a bootless inquisition, concluding, stay not yet. So Miranda says, oh father, in the past also many a time, you often wanted to tell me something, and I would be all ears and attentive, and then you would say, no, it's not the right time. And then you would leave me to falling in an unending bottom of curiosity. Okay? And then Prospero says, the hours now come The very minute bids thee, open thine ears, obey and be attentive. Canst thou remember a time before we came unto the cell? I do not think thou canst, for then thou was not out there 3 years old. Okay, so Prospero says, now it's the time, Miranda. Now I have to tell you about our past. So open your eyes and your ears wide, meaning be very attentive and listen to me carefully. And then he asks a question first and says, tell me, Miranda, do you remember anything before we came to this island? But even before waiting for an answer, he shuns the question and says, oh no, how can I even expect that? I'm sure you don't remember anything, because then you were not even 3 years of age. You were very small. Okay, but to his utter surprise, Miranda says, certainly, sir, I can. Okay, so Prospero first asks the question and says, do you remember anything, Miranda, before we came to this island? But he himself shuns the question and says, no, how can I even expect that? You were very small. But to his utter surprise, Miranda says, actually, sir, I do remember something. Prospero is shocked. By what? By any other house or person? Of anything the image? Tell me that had kept with thy remembrance. So Prospero is shocked that there is still something that Miranda remembers. Okay, so he becomes shocked and says, what is it, Miranda? What is it that you remember? Tell me. Do you remember any house, any person's face, any neighboring people? What is it? Tell me. Miranda says, just far off and rather like a dream than an assurance that my remembrance warrants. Had I not 4 or 5 women once that tended me? So first Miranda says, Father, it is far off meaning it is like a dream, very vague. And she says, I don't even know whether it is a dream or a reality. But tell me, Father, I just remember one thing. Tell me, when I was small, did I have 4 or 5 women attending to me? Okay, so this is the picture that has stayed in her mind. She remembers when she was very small, she had 4 or 5 women servants who were attending her. Okay, who would attend her. Prospero is shocked. Thou hadst, and more, Miranda. But how is it that this lives in thy mind? What seest thou else in the dark backward and abysm of time? If thou rememberest aught ere thou camest here, how thou camest here thou mayest. So Prospero is shocked and says, of course, my dear daughter, you did have women attending on you. But tell me, how does this still stay? How does this image still stay in your memory? Do you remember anything else? Do you remember any circumstances that led us to land on this island? If you remember anything, then tell me. Okay? But Miranda says, but that I do not. Sorry, Father. Apart from this, I do not remember anything. And then now Prospero starts relating the story of the past. He says, 12 years since, Miranda, 12 years since, thy father was the Duke of Milan and a Prince of Par. So here he says, 12 years has gone by, Miranda. 12 long years. 12 long years ago, your father was the Duke of Milan. He was a man of power and authority. So now this puts Miranda in a state of confusion, because Prospero doesn't say 12 years ago I was the Duke of Milan. He doesn't say that. He says your father was the Duke of Milan. So this puts Miranda in a state of confusion, and she asks, sir, are you not my father? Okay, so Miranda asks, what, sir? Are you not my father then? Prospero says, thy mother was a piece of virtue, and she said thou wast my daughter, and thy father was Duke of Milan, and his only heir and princess, no worse issued. So Prospero says, no, it's not that. In fact, your mother was a very virtuous woman. Okay, very virtuous woman. And she told me that you are my daughter. Okay, and 12 long years ago, Prospero, your father, was the Duke of Milan, a man of power, and you, my daughter, the only heir to the throne. You were the Princess of Milan. Just imagine. Miranda just got the shock of her life. She has been living on that island with her father for 12 long years. She doesn't know anything of the past. And here, after 12 long years, her father tells her that she is rather the Princess of Milan. So she's shocked. And she says, oh, the heavens! What foul play had we that we came from thence? Oh, blessed was we indeed. Okay, so Miranda says, oh heavens, oh Father, what treason did we commit? What crime did we commit? Due to which we were kicked out from our own dukedom and we landed here. Or was it good indeed that we landed here? So what is it, Father? And obviously, if a king or a duke or a man of power and authority is ousted from his own dukedom or kingdom, that usually happens when the person has committed a crime or a treason. Okay, so that's the reason why Miranda is asking, Father, how come we landed on this island? Did we commit any crime, any treason? Or was it good that we came to this island? To which Prospero says, both, my girl. By foul play, as thou sayest, were we heaved thence, but blessedly hope hither. Okay, so Prospero says both. It is both, my girl. It is good also, it is bad also. Foul play, it was foul play, it is bad. How we were cheated by our own people. How we were deceived. Okay, and we were kicked out from our own dukedom. But it is good indeed that we managed to survive and we landed on this island. So it is both, my girl. It is good also, it is bad also. And then Miranda says, oh, my heart bleeds to think of the teen that I have turned to you to, which is from my remembrance. Please you, Father. Okay, so Miranda says, oh, Father, it fills me, it just gives me goosebumps. It makes me so sad to even think of what conditions you might have gone through, what circumstances you had to go through. Okay, what you had to suffer, what all you had to suffer. All right, and then Prospero says, my brother and thy uncle Antonio, I pray thee mark me, that our brothers should be so perfidious. He whom next myself of all the world I loved, and to him put the manage of my state, as at that time through all the signories it was the first, and Prospero the prime duke, being so reputed in dignity and for the liberal arts, without a parallel, those being all my study, the governance I cast upon my brother, and to my state grew further stranger, being transported and wrapped in secret studies. Okay, so here Prospero says, and then 12 years ago I was the Duke of Milan, the supreme Duke of Milan, and my brother Antonio, your uncle Antonio, I loved him dearly. I trusted him dearly like a parent. He meant the world to him. Okay, so that time I was the supreme Duke of Milan. I was a man of power and authority. My people loved me. I was renowned. Okay, and that time I was so much learned in liberal arts. There was no other parallel. There was no other person who could equal to me in my knowledge. Okay, so I was so learned. I was so wise. I was so able. But my only flaw was that I was not able to balance between my prime duty, being the Duke of Milan, to look after my dukedom, and my personal thirst for acquiring more knowledge. I was not being able to balance between the two. So as a result, I handed the state of governance in the hands of my brother Antonio, because I trusted him so much, I loved him so much, and I kept myself shut in my studies, in my library, where I was reading and acquiring knowledge vigorously about secret studies, about occult, about magic, and I didn't know what was going outside. Okay, so this is what had happened 12 years ago. Prospero was the Duke of Milan. He was a man of power and authority. He was so much learned. Okay, and that time his only hamartia, or his only tragic flaw which led to his downfall, was that he was not able to balance between looking after his dukedom, and his thirst for acquiring more knowledge. So as a result, he gave the state of governance into the hands of his brother Antonio, made him the substitute Duke of Milan, or the acting Duke of Milan. And he kept himself locked in his library, where he was reading and acquiring knowledge. He didn't know what was happening outside. He didn't even wish to know what was happening outside. And he grew stranger from his state. Had it been any other person, we would have simply kept a spy to know what is going outside. But he was an innocent man. He loved his brother. He trusted his brother. So he didn't know what was happening outside. He trusted him blindly. He gave the state of governance in the hands of his brother, made him the acting Duke of Milan or the substitute Duke of Milan for a temporary period of time. And then he kept aloof. He kept away from the dukedom. Okay? And then Prospero asks, and then your false uncle, dost thou attend me? Are you listening to me, Miranda? Miranda says, sir, most heedfully, I am very attentive. Prospero says, being once perfected how to grant suits, how to deny them, who to advance, and who to trash for overtopping, new created the creatures that were mine, I say, or changed them, or else new formed him, having both the key of officer and office, set all hearts in the state to what tune pleased his ear, that now he was the ivy which had hid my princely trunk, and sucked my verdure out on it. Thou attendest not. Okay, so Prospero says, so this is what happened. Okay, so I made him the acting Duke of Milan. So he got power. And once he got power, once Antonio got the taste of power, he became hungry for more. Okay, so once he was made the acting Duke of Milan, he got all the power to govern his dukedom. Now he came to know how the dukedom functions. Okay, he had the power to grant petitions. If somebody came to him with petitions, he had the power to either grant them. If he didn't like them, he could reject them. Okay, he could even employ new officials. If he didn't like some, he could simply kick them out. So he could do whatever he wanted to because he had the key to the office and the officer. So since he was made the acting Duke of Milan, he had power over the entire dukedom and the people. So he played them and molded them and twisted them according to what tune pleased his ears. Okay, so Prospero says, then he acted like the ivy that hid my princely trunk. And ivy is a creeper plant. And I'm sure you've seen creepers. You've seen how creepers, they start developing, they start crawling on the host plant. Suppose this is a tree. So the trunk of the tree, and the creeper starts crawling slowly, and then it climbs all the way up. And all the while it's gaining its nourishment from the host plant, the tree. So there comes a time when at a time when the creeper, it entirely hides the entire tree. Okay, so Antonio acted like that ivy, like that creeper, where he used the power that was given by Prospero to him to suck the verdure out from Prospero. He drew all the nourishment from Prospero, meaning the same power which Prospero vested on the hands of his brother Antonio, he used the same power to turn against Prospero. Alright, and Miranda says, and then Prospero asks his daughter, you're not attentive, are you, Miranda? Miranda says, oh good sir, I do. I am listening, I am very attentive. Prospero says, I mark thee, I pray thee mark me. I, thus neglecting worldly ends, all dedicated to closeness and the bettering of my mind, with that which, but by being so retired, overprized all popular rate in my false brother, awakened an evil nature. And my trust, like a good parent, did beget of him a falsehood in its contrary as great as my trust was, which had indeed no limit, a confidence our bound. He being thus lauded, not only with what my revenue yielded, but what my power might else exact, like one who having into truth by telling of it made such a sinner of his memory, to credit his own lie. He did believe he was indeed the Duke out of the substitution, and executing the outward face of the royalty with all prerogative. Hence his ambition growing. Okay, so that was what had happened. Prospero was all the while in his studies. Okay, he was focused in bettering his mind. He was acquiring more knowledge of secret studies of liberal arts. He didn't know what was happening outside. And what was happening outside was that Antonio had started to become ambitious. Once he got the taste of power, he became hungry for more. He knew that his brother Prospero would come back one day And more to that, the heir to the throne, Miranda, is there. And the very thought made him mad. Now he does not want to do away with that power. Now he wants absolute control. Okay, so that is how Antonio became ambitious. And he started feeding lies to his own mind. He thought that he is the one who should rather be the permanent Duke of Milan. He thought he was very capable. Now he knew where the revenues were all coming from, how he could use his own power to extract more revenues. So this is how he became ambitious and more ambitious. Okay? And then Prospero says, "Dost thou hear? Are you attentive?" So Miranda says, "Your tale, sir, would cure deafness." So, "Yes, father, I am very attentive. Your tale is so touching that even a deaf person would want to hear your tale." And then Prospero says, "To have no screen between this part he played and him he played for it for, he needs will be absolute Milan. Me, poor man, my library was dukedom large enough. Of temporal royalties he thinks me now incapable. Confederate so dry he was for sway with the King of Naples, to give him annual tribute, do him homage, subject his coronet to his crown, and bend the dukedom yet unbowed. Alas, poor Milan, to most ignoble stooping." Okay, so once Antonio started becoming ambitious, now he wanted absolute control over Milan. Okay, he no way wanted to do away with that position now. Okay, so now he thought that Prospero was no longer capable of governing the dukedom. Okay, he started feeding lies to his own mind. He started believing that he is so much capable, much more capable than Prospero. Okay, he started believing that he must be the Duke of Milan. There was no way he wanted to do away with that power. He wanted to gain absolute control over Milan. So what he did was he went to the King of Naples, Alonso. And Alonso was an enemy of Prospero. So there he went to the King of Alonso and they shook hands. And it was agreed. They came to a secret agreement. Okay, so it was agreed that Alonso would help Antonio get rid of Prospero and Miranda and make him the permanent Duke of Milan. And in return, Antonio had to pay a certain amount of money every year to Naples. So this is how the dukedom of Milan, how Milan stooped and bowed low in front of Naples and pledged its loyalty. And Prospero calls this the most ignoble stooping. Okay? Miranda says, "Oh, the heavens, this is so sad." Prospero, "Mark his condition and the event, then tell me if this might be a brother." Okay, so Prospero is saying, mark the condition. Okay, so analyze the condition. Think about it, what I have told you. Think of the situation then. And then you judge this person and tell me whether this person would ever be fit to be called a brother. Okay? And Miranda says, "I should sin to think but nobly of my grandmother. Good wombs have borne bad sons." So Miranda says, "Oh father, I would only be a sinner if I will think otherwise and say that you might not be blood brothers." Okay, so to think that would even be a sin, because my grandmother was such a virtuous lady. But we know, father, good wombs have borne bad children. Okay, the mother might be so virtuous. Okay, whereas the son, the same sons, there may be brothers born out of the same womb, but sometimes how brothers are so different from each other. One might be so good and so honorable and so compassionate, filled with virtue, and the other one might be filled with vices, evil. You've seen how brothers are so different to each other. So we know that good wombs have often borne bad sons. Okay? And then Prospero says, "Now the condition, this King of Naples being an enemy to me inveterate, hearkens my brother's suit, which was that he in lieu of the premises of homage, and I not know how much tribute, should presently extirpate me and mine out of the dukedom, and confer fair Milan with all the honours on my brother." whereon a treacherous army levied one midnight, fated to the purpose, did Antonio open the gates of Milan, and in the dead of darkness the ministers for the purpose hurried, thence me and thyself, thy crying self. Okay, so Prospero says, so now mark this condition, okay? So you have to listen to me carefully, Miranda. Okay, mark my condition, mark the condition. This enemy, this King of Naples was my enemy, inveterate enemy. Okay, so King of Naples, Alonso, was an enemy of Prospero. And when my own brother Antonio went to him with a suit, with a petition, he at once accepted it because he thought this was a golden opportunity to revenge on me. So he accepted. And then it was agreed, they signed an agreement, secret agreement, that Alonso would help Antonio get rid of me and yourself from Milan, in return of which Antonio had to pay a certain amount of money every year to Naples. So this is how one midnight, in the dead of darkness in midnight, Antonio opened the gates of Milan and let in the enemy soldiers, Napoleon soldiers, march in. And that is when they took us out of our own dukedom. We were crying back then, Miranda. Alright? And then Miranda says, alack for pity, I not remembering how I cried out then, will cry it over again. It is a hint that rings mine eyes to it. So Miranda says, oh Father, I feel so pity. You must have felt so bad. You must have gone through so much of hardship. I don't remember how I must have cried back then because I was very small. But now, after hearing all this from you, it fills my eyes with tears. I feel so bad, Father. And then Prospero says, hear a little further, and then I'll bring thee to the present business, which now is upon, without which the story were most impertinent. So Prospero says, hear a little further, Miranda. Listen to me carefully for a while longer. Okay? And then I will bring you to the present business. And present business here means the reason why he had created the Tempest. Okay? So he says, listen to me a bit further, Miranda. And then I will tell you why I created the Tempest. Because without telling you the story of the past, it wouldn't make any sense. Okay? And then Miranda says, wherefore did they not that are destroy us? So now there is a question in the mind of Miranda, and she asks the father, Father, tell me, since my uncle Antonio, since Alonso, Antonio, all these people, since they hated us so much, they so wanted to do away with us, why didn't they kill us at the very moment? Why did they, left us to the mercy of the sea? Why did they have to sail us away? Why didn't they kill us? And Prospero says, well demanded wench, my tale provokes that question. So Prospero says, that's a good question, girl. And I knew, after hearing this tale, I knew that you would. Dear, they durst not. So dear the love my people bore me, nor set a mark so bloody on the business. But with colours fairer painted their foul ends. In few they hurried us aboard a bark, bore us some leagues to sea, where they prepared a rotten carcass of a butt, not rigged, nor tackle, sail, nor mast, the very rats instinctively have quitted. There they hoist us to cry to the sea, that roared to us, to sigh to the winds of pity, sighing back again, did us but lovingly wrong. So when Miranda asks the father, why didn't they kill us? They could have easily killed us. Why didn't they do that? Prospero says, they dared not do that. They dared not kill us. Why? Because my people loved me. My people loved me. So if they had killed us in broad daylight, it would be murderous. It would be blasphemous. It would be treachery. It would be a sin to kill your dukedom. And on top of that, your own brother. Alright, so they dared not do that. So rather, they used fair and vibrant colors in order to paint their vile and evil and malicious deeds. So that is why they chose the dead of darkness, where they took us out one midnight. They took us to the sea, where they had prepared a rotten carcass of a butt. Okay, they had prepared a ship, and it doesn't even deserve to be called a ship. Okay, because it was not a fully functioning ship. It was just a piece of metal. There was no sail, no mast, nothing. It was just a piece of metal. It was in such a bad condition that even rats wouldn't want to tread on it. Okay, so there they left us on that piece of metal and sailed us away, where we were crying and howling. Nobody was at our rescue. Only the winds were howling back at us. Okay, so this is what they had done 12 years ago to poor Miranda and Prospero and his daughter Miranda. Miranda says, "Alack, what trouble was I then to you?" So Miranda says, "Oh father, what troubles did I cause you then? I'm sure I must have caused you so much trouble." Okay, Prospero says, "Oh, a cherubim, thou wast that did preserve me. Thou didst smile infused with a fortitude from heaven, when I have decked the sea with drops full salt under my burden groaned, which raised in me an undergoing stomach to bear up against what should ensue." Okay, so when Miranda asks the father, "Oh father, I must have caused you so much trouble back then because I was so small." But Prospero says, No, you didn't cause me any trouble. In fact, you were a cherubim. You were an angel who preserved me. Okay, you were an angel. Okay, the reason why I am alive now. Because out there, when they hoisted us to the sea, when they left us to the mercy of the sea, in that rotten carcass of a butt, I was so disheartened. When I learned about the evils of my brother, I felt so bad. I was crying, I was shedding drops of salt, meaning I was crying profusely. I felt so bad. I was howling, only the winds were howling back. I felt so bad. And then I just happened to look at you. And there you were, smiling. And that smile looked like as if it was implanted by the heaven itself. And that very smile gave me a will to survive. It gave me a courage to endure all hardship. Alright? And then Miranda says, How came we ashore? So now there's another question in the mind of Miranda. And she says, "But father, how did we manage to survive? How did we manage to come to this island?" And Prospero says, "By providence divine, some food we had and some fresh water that a noble Neapolitan Gonzalo, out of his charity, who being then appointed master of this design, did give us, which rich garments, linens, stuffs and accessories, which since have steaded much. So of his gentleness, knowing I loved my books, he furnished me from mine own library with volumes that I prize above my dukedom." So Miranda asks the father, "Father, tell me, since they had placed us in that rotten carcass of a butt and they sailed us away, but how come we managed to survive? How did we manage to land on this island?" And then Prospero says, "By providence divine, by God's grace, and by the goodness of that old Neapolitan friend Gonzalo." Okay, so it was by God's grace and because of the goodness of Gonzalo. Because then Gonzalo, the old Neapolitan, was in charge of all this, to execute this plan, to put us in that rotten carcass of a butt and sail us away. So he was in charge. Okay, but due to his goodness, since he was a good man and since he was fond of me, he secretly, without the knowledge of Antonio, without the knowledge of Alonso, and without the knowledge of others, he secretly placed some necessities like food, fresh water, some linens, some clothing, and most importantly, the books of Prospero. Okay, because Gonzalo knew that for Prospero, his books mean the world to him. So he had secretly took some volumes of books from Prospero's library and secretly placed them. Okay, so this was how they had managed to survive and had landed on this island. Because the idea was, the plan actually was to just sail them away with no food, no fresh water, so that they would die somewhere in the middle of the sea. But all thanks to the good Lord Gonzalo, out of his goodwill, out of his goodness, he had secretly placed some necessities. So that is how they had managed to survive. Alright, and Miranda says, "Would I might but ever see that man? Oh father, will I ever get a chance, an opportunity to meet that noble man?" And Prospero says, "Now I rise, sit still, and hear the last of our sea sorrow. Here in this island we arrived, and here have I, thy schoolmaster, made thee more profit than other princesses can that have more time for vainer hours, and tutors not so careful." Okay, so then Prospero just gets up, now I rise, and he tells his daughter, sit down, sit down. Hear the last of our sea sorrows. So that is how, by the goodness of Gonzalo, we were drifted in the open sea for days, and then we landed on this island. On this island where I have schoolmastered you. Here I have acted as a tutor to you. I have given you all the basic educations, and I'm sure I have given you the best educations that even the princes out there could ever receive. So here on this island we reached, and we have been living on this island for 12 long years, and here on this very island I have school tutored you. I have given you all the basic educations. Okay, and then Miranda says, heavens, thank you for it. And now I pray you, sir, for tis still beating in my mind your reason for raising the sea storm. So Miranda says, oh father, I'm so grateful that you tutored me. But tell me, father, it is still beating on my mind. I still have this question. Why did you create the tempest? Why this tempest then? To which Prospero says, know this far forth, by accident most strange, bountiful fortune, now my dear lady, hath mine enemies brought to the shore, and by my prescience I find my zenith doth depend upon, a most auspicious star, whose influence, if now I count not, but omit, my fortunes will ever droop after droop. Okay, so Miranda asks the father, but tell me, father, why did you create the tempest? And then Prospero says, after 12 long years, my daughter, fate, or the most generous destiny, had brought once again my enemies so close to me. So after 12 long years having lived on this island, after 12 long years, fate had brought my enemies so close to me. And it might be because of my auspicious star. It must be because of my stars that are shining bright, because of my good fate, that after 12 long years, destiny brought my enemies so close to this island. And then is when I thought I had to seize this opportunity, because if I let them go now, I never know when I'll be able to see them. So that is why I acted right upon and created the tempest. Okay, so this was what had happened. And those people, the royal entourage, Alonso, King of Naples, Duke of Milan, Antonio, Gonzalo, Sebastian, Prince of Naples, Ferdinand, Adrian, Francisco, all these people were actually going to Naples, and they were returning from Tunis, present-day Tunisia, okay? Because they were returning from Tunis after attending Alonso's daughter Claribel's marriage in Tunis. So when they were returning from Tunis, they neared the island where Prospero had been living. So when they neared the island, Prospero came to know that his enemies are so close. And this is when he thought that he had to seize this opportunity. Because if they leave him, he will never know when he'll ever see them again. So that is the reason why Prospero had created the tempest, in order to avenge the wrongs that had been done on them 12 years ago. Alright, and then after that Prospero says, here, seize more questions, thou art inclined to sleep, 'tis a good dullness, and give it away, I know thou canst not choose. So now after relating all the story of his past, and after telling his daughter everything and the reason why he created the tempest, now all of a sudden Prospero says, now enough, girl, no more question, seize no more questions, now don't ask any questions, because now it's time for you to sleep. And then he says, and give it away. You can't choose. You don't have the option to choose. And then he just casts his magic spell on Miranda, and she falls flat. She's sleeping now. Okay, so now you'll see how at times even the sleep of his daughter Miranda is determined by Prospero. Okay, so he says, no more question, Miranda, now it's time for you to sleep. He casts his magic spell, and Miranda falls asleep. And now Prospero calls for his dear servant Ariel. He says, come away, servant, come. I am ready now. Approach, my Ariel, come. So after Prospero has narrated the happenings of the past to his daughter Miranda and why he had created the tempest, he casts a spell on Miranda and she falls asleep. And now he calls for his servant Ariel. Come, my industrious servant, come. Now you may approach. I am free now. You may come. Okay, so this is where we will stop. So this is the first episode. I told you that this is pretty long. There are 4 episodes altogether. So the first episode where Prospero narrates the story of their past to his daughter Miranda, we have just completed. Alright, and there are 3 more episodes in this scene. Okay, so stay tuned. I will be uploading videos, okay? Continuation of this. Alright, so if you have any doubts and queries, then please feel free to drop a message in the comment box. Okay, so then we will continue in our next session. I'll be uploading another video shortly. Alright, so till then, take care and stay safe, and thank you so much.